My name's Kevin Stevens. I'm the lead grower here at Plant Delights Nursery in Juniper Level Gardens. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some do's and don'ts with transplanting agaves that have gotten way out of control in many different areas. So once you buy them and you bring them home and they're nice and small and you get them into a pot and everything's good, and then they're going to get big. That seems to be the question where a lot of people have challenges on what to do once we get them into the pot after a year or two of enjoying them. So I have some different examples set up here. As you can see, there's a lot of growth that is gone and been cut off, certain things. I have ones that are just root bound and basically haven't been repotted in a long time. We have some other ones here that we're just going to separate out and take out some of the good ones. Maybe we don't want all of this other media. It's old in here. It's really root bound, so we're going to do some cleaning up on this. We're going to do some disassembling on this because, as you can see, this species of Victoria Reginae offsets a lot. So we're going to show you how to clean up something when it gets a little bit out of control. So we're going to focus on a few different ideas. You're going to definitely need a few different weapons. The weapons are a must, and you will see why in a second. So the first thing I'm going to start with is just this little plant that we have. And it's supposed to look like this, okay? It offsets inside and on top of each other. So it's completely normal, but as you see, a lot of the tips are starting to burn on here. And the real reason behind it is there is absolutely dead roots and no soil. The soil is probably closer to a year old at this point. As you can see, it'll start really breaking down and decomposing, and it's not going to be a good media for the plant. This is why we're constantly having to repot our house plants, etc., anything really in a container. So in a situation like this, we really want to clean up all of these dead roots. If the roots were nice and white, it would be different, but when I have a lot of dead media, we want to actually take it all the way back to where it's going to start coming out with new growth and new roots. And I'm just going to slowly comb through the roots. And what I'm going to be left with are the healthier roots. As you can see, a lot of the white roots are now showing.
So the white roots is
the healthy, alive roots, yeah. So we're going to clean all that up and all that back and try to really get any of our dead growth at the same time. Get all the way back, because this is what I'm looking for. So you see, these are the brand new roots that we're really trying to establish again. So we really want to take it all the way back to almost the crown of the agave. And I'll show you a little bit more detail later. But this is now going to be ready to be potted. So I am going to go to a slightly bigger pot with this. This grows really small, really slow, so we don't need to really up the pot too much with it. So you always got to pay attention to the agaves that you're growing as to how fast they might need to be potted up and into what container. With most plants, I usually am about a 3-to-1, meaning if it was a quart pot, I would put it into a 3-quart pot. With agaves, it's a little bit different because we want to make sure that the growth speed matches the pot size. So it is a little bit different than a typical house plant. So once again, I'm just going to try to get an idea of where it's going to sit. And then just try to lay it down nice and easy. This way it's kind of going in between that root system. And I'm lifting it up just a little bit each time to allow that soil to get right down into that root zone. And then with all of these, I will knock them down. And I will also take my finger and make sure that I'm pushing down in them. We don't want any air bubbles. If I get gaps of air or cavities or caves of nothing, it's going to be very, very detrimental on the plant's growth rate, especially in the root zone. So we want to make sure that it's nice and tight to the top. And as you can see, that's nice and firm in the pot. And now once again, it should be a lot happier. We're going to have the tip damage start to go away. A lot of the new growth is going to be what we're after. So a lot of this older growth is just going to decay and fall apart, but the newer growth should start taking over a lot faster. We add a little bit of NutriCoat, which is just a fertilizer that allows us a slow release over time. Every time you water, it is heat sensitive, but it does work with the heat in the watering. And that's what you're left with, and that's what you should pretty much have at the end of this style of potting. Now, we have some very interesting ones as well.
So do you need it for watering?
Yes, I would be watering these all in, but I'm taking them back to our botanical greenhouse for the garden, because these are all of our garden cultivars. I'm going to water them in there, therefore I don't have to put the water on the cart and everything else, yes. When I would water something in like this, I would water it in thoroughly, and then I probably wouldn't water it in again for about 7 days.
So every week?
It would depend on your environment, so it's just a guess. If it's an indoor environment, you can go a little bit longer. A plant like that that's a lot smaller is going to use less water. So once again, it's going to be more individualized. Whereas something like this or something like this is going to need to be watered maybe every other day. And that just depends on the humidity, the evaporation of where it's at, and the heat and everything else going to it. So as you can see, this one's just a mess. There's just a lot going on. And eventually we had a large agave hanging off here that was all cut back. And these are actually some of the actual pups that have been removed, or the offsetting agaves we call pups. So in a situation like this, we're just gonna basically take this back to one crown. I'm gonna remove most of everything else in here. And the soil is just trashed. Let me see if I can even get anything out to show you. And once again, this is why we're doing it. It almost at this point looks like almost peat moss or cocoa coir, whereas this is what we started with. So this is the real reason that we'll start seeing a lot of suffering with the leaf structure as well as the browning of the tips. It's not even based on water anymore. It's based on the fact that the soil cannot help the plant sustain any life. So in a situation like this, the easiest thing to do, especially in a clay pot, is we're going to actually knock these on the side, not on anything metal. You will crack it right away. I've learned the hard way. And what that's going to do is allow me to loosen up the root system. And it makes it a lot easier to remove. If you try to just pull on that, a lot of these roots will start actually working into the clay on the pot. So by loosening it up, it'll help you get them out a lot easier. We are going to repot right back into this one. But as you can see, here's what we're left with. And you can see the amount of dead roots in here at this point. Very few white roots. I had a little bit more healthier roots on this side. And then the actual soil, like we looked at before, it just isn't. That's where we're at. These are a little wet. These were on my back patio last night during a rain, so they are a little bit more moist than they should be. But once again, we are not at a consistency with good drainage. By this point, we're just saturated. So the nice thing about agaves is you can root them very easy. And as you can see, they're pretty much almost ready to be rooted and potted even at a small stage. I always clean up the bottoms of them. Usually till about, I got 4 or 5 is usually what I like to do. Everybody can do it a little bit differently. The more I take off the bottom, the faster the meristem and the top's gonna grow for me. So it's kind of like a little give and take where people are like, oh, I want to keep all the material. It's easier to let it reflush, especially when you're potting. So just like this is the same thing. Down here. Yeah. And then basically the same thing would be right there at that meristem level, and that's where that new root's going to start forming.
So what do you do with the ball of roots or whatever you had snapped them off from? Just toss it?
Yeah, this is all garbage. We're not dealing with anything with this, and as you can see, we just, you know, remove the whole head. Kind of like lettuce or cabbage in a way. But I'll show you real quick why. So as you can see, it's already got a root on it. So this plant was already trying to root in the air in hopes that the rest of it would let it just die and it could get to the soil. So that's why we do it.
Wow.
So I'm just going to carefully clean up some of the material that's around here. And when it's small like this, I like to try to remove it this way. When it gets bigger, I'll show you we're just going to use more of the tools. But when it's small, you can kind of really remove it nice and easy. It makes a nice clean tear. And it works me all the way back to making a spot to actually plant in where the roots are going to come off. And once again, I'm going back to what I said. We usually about maybe 4 or 5 actual leaves. So we'll take one more off here. Set that aside. And once again, this is just trash at this point. So when I do this, excuse me, real quick, I forgot I need one item. This is a rooting hormone, and this is going to help promote our root growth on that new agave. So this is the other item that we're needing. This stays in the refrigerator at all times. You got to keep it cool. And now I will go ahead and just apply just a little bit right to the lid that works the best. And I'm just going to slowly coat the bottom in our rooting hormone. And this will help stimulate new growth. Agaves will grow very fast, indefinitely with the roots. This is just a precautionary method to get them to root a little bit harder and faster, as well as does not allow them to have as much time to possibly decompose down there. It's going to be more vigorous growth instead of anything down here that might be decomposing at the time. Go back to our original pot with some new soil. Ice scoops are godsends when you're doing potting. And we're going to fill this one just about all the way up. And then once you're set, I'm just going to kind of make a cavity for it to fall into. I don't want to go too deep. I'll make sure that some of that soil gets pushed in so we're not having a cavity with it. Set it in there like that. Push down a little bit, not hard, but just a little bit. And once again, I'm using a very spongy mix. That's why I'm doing this. If it was peat moss or cocoa coir based, you do not want to push down on it. You're going to start compacting the soil. And at this point, it's going to get the same treatment. And when we water these in, I will be watering them in with some microbials, as well as some rooting hormones in the mix, IBA and NNA, as well, to get that root established. So once again, as you were looking, we went from that giant, nasty looking pot, same pot, didn't change anything, just changed the soil, and probably within 2 weeks it'll start rooting really through, and then I probably am gonna see new growth in about a month from here. It should be double its size by the time it goes into its photosensitive cycle, because they're gonna stop growing based on light. All right, which one do we want to do next? And I will tell you that I already cheated and loosened all of the soil because I was not going to struggle, or from the pots. So they're all going to come right out for us right now. But once again, take it and knock it before you go ahead and start that. So basically with this one and a lot of ones that'll offset all over the place, once again, this is a Victoria Reginae, which is just that style where it's got really thick leaf and it'll offset all over the point. What we're looking for is we're going to take it all the way back to one rosette. That's kind of the goal behind this whole mess. So the easiest way to get in and look and actually do anything is to come in through the bottom. If you come in through the top, you most likely going to experience something you don't want to experience. It's going to be real prickly on that and everything else. So all this is going to do is just help me loosen up some of the soil here. And once again, you can just see how the old roots are just falling off at this point. And don't be afraid to lay it down. You can easily flip it upside down on itself. A lot of these won't even damage that spike, but you just want to go real gentle when you're doing it. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm getting all the way back where we start seeing those new roots like I was talking about forming. Got a lot more white coming. And then the same thing here. These are all the pups. Now go ahead and pass one around if you want to look. That's the part that would root. Like I said, we might take 2 leaves off of that to kind of expose that stem just a little bit, and it'll start rooting. So you can pretty much cut these off. Some of them might have roots on them, some of them might not. My recommendation is to get in behind the actual plant and use a pair of snips or a tool to really take it out at that point. We're not going to be saving a ton of these. So, and this is how in propagation we would also go ahead, and if we wanted to propagate more babies, if you have a neighbor, a friend, somebody else, they make really good gifts to give to people at this point, because unless you have a ton of them or a ton of greenhouse space, you're going to have to make some concession somewhere. So once again, as you can see, we're starting to get to that point, and I'm just working off all the other material. Looking at that main rosette is what we're really after here. All right, so this is one of the best tools to use when you get here. And I know everybody has heard and seen of it, and that is the Ginsu knife. Don't ask me why Tony has gone to that. And it works really well for everything that we got to get done. I try to just cut it to where I can split it with my hands more than anything else. Okay. That one we don't want anymore. And then the same technique, we're going to come in here, peel some of this back, and as you can see, that's what we're looking for. It's that brand new white roots coming out. Okay. And don't be scared if they get beaten up a little bit in the process of all this. They will be just fine. We're just going to kind of set this guy on top. So we want to make sure that we're sitting there at that same level. And once again, we would be watering these in as we go, but I'm going to be watering these in at the end when I move everything back. All right. Now we get to the fun stuff. Excuse me, a little humid. So we have this, and this has been growing in this pot, gotta be probably 3 years at this point. We've had growth that's fallen off this at times. We've had cut it back, and really at this point what we're going to do is we're actually going to top this whole plant off about the same way. So we're going to get in here, and this is where it comes down to needing something that's going to be a lot more durable, like a saw. So we did loosen this up already. We hit it on the plastic, pops out nice and easy for us. And the easiest way for me is to almost lay it over the bench the way it is sitting now. And I just let the back of it crack, as you heard. I didn't cut it all the way through. And right here, we should be left with that. And then at this point, we're going to pull off just a few of those pads as well. Kind of exposes that trunk I always like to try to do them if I can with my hand because it's a little cleaner. Okay. And then the same thing, we are going to pot this guy back in the same pot as well. So a lot of what you're seeing is we're just reusing the same materials. We sometimes do not have to up pot into bigger containers. The last one we'll be working with has a really, really fast growth rate. So we're gonna definitely put it to a bigger pot, as you can see right here. So this will be the same thing that we're doing. And what's nice is we'll leave this extra growth in there. It'll help support and stabilize it. Make sure it sits in there okay before we do anything. And once again, we're going to take a little bit of that rooting hormone. Just applying it to the base.
So this hormone can apply to any plant?
Yes, yes.
Is that what that is right there? That,
Yes, exactly. There's a few different varieties and versions, but basically they all do about the same thing. They're just promoting healthy root growth and really giving the chemicals that are needed to promote new roots. And same thing here, we're just going to fill it back in. And instead of pounding it, I like tapping it. I can see all the pieces kind of move, keep it around the edge. I have accidentally pounded them and broken the bottoms, especially a clay pot. It will happen. All right. Now probably about a month, that one should be good to start rooting, and it should be growing by the end of its cycle this year.
you want to keep the name tag?
Yeah. We sure do. A little bit of NutriCode on it. And that's, like I said, what we use. It's just a real easy fertilizer to not burn the plant, keep it fertilized for about 6 months.
I had a question about
Yes.
leaf growth. Some are symmetrical and some are grouped. What is there anything that causes that?
With the symmetry?
Like this one here, how it kind of droops, but these grow straight. Is there anything that makes them droop or not?
Just older. They're all gonna eventually start that same process.
That's really about age.
Yeah, it's just the style of the agave too, more than anything else. All right, so we got one more we're gonna go through, and as you can see, this is a fast grower. So I don't think this one's even been in here a year from a very small plant. And just in the species and everything else, it's definitely a faster grower. Agave Americana, it's a marshmallow cream, and it has a lot larger leaf structure to it, some variegation, but it has a lot of green in it, so it'll speed up the process. Once again, we would knock them on something to loosen them up ahead of time. And as you can see here, this is what we're really looking for with the root system. We want something with these nice white healthy roots. And because agaves are not a woody root, I don't have to really mess with it. The reason that I had to mess with the last few were for different reasons. This example on purpose is a healthy plant with a healthy root system. So I don't have to really do too much in order to get it into this pot.
So your point being that the roots would already be ready to go out.
Exactly, exactly. So instead of, a lot of people want to try to fight through that process of the plant, what Tony showed me is we're going to fill this one up with soil. We are going to cut back a few of these leaves, and this is when I would definitely go to using the Ginsu knife. And I'm just going to come in here, nice and easy, just slowly remove a few of the leaves. This is going to help with watering, and it's also going to help amplify the actual growth of the plant. So I'm going to really probably choose to do everything that's going to be right around the base. And I am trying to cut as close to the base as I can when I do this. And this is where I would recommend a very sharp serrated knife. I am not sponsored by Ginsu, but once again, that is what we're using. So, we kind of removed everything here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is basically just go ahead, I'm just going to get a kind of eyeball measurement of how much dirt I need to put in the bottom. And I think we're going to switch buckets. And what I'm looking for is when we put this one in here, pretty much about an inch below the top. So this level should be right about an inch below the top. And I'm close, but we're going to test it to see what's going on. Okay, right about there. And then we're just going to center it. So as you can see, it's not as hard to actually repot a new pot that you've worked on instead of trying to fix old messes. You always should repot them way before they become old messes like we've been looking at. And the reason is it makes it a lot easier. So now I'm just going to take our dirt and I'm just going to really fill in the outside edges.
So you're going to keep the root?
On these roots, because they're all healthy roots, we're going to plant this way. If the roots were old or diseased or anything else, we couldn't. But with healthy roots, because they're not woody roots, they're going to be ready just to expand out from where they're at right now. I only really want to mess with the root structure if the roots have been failing or in a situation where we actually had to cut back things and completely repot. One more here I'm going to get rid of. And the media that I'm using is basically just pine bark with compost and a little bit of lime added to balance out the pH. So it's a very well draining mix. You always want to make sure with agaves that it's a very well drained soil. Permatil works really good. That's how they're growing in our crevice garden beds over there. Once again, this is the other reason I like the technique on the side better. Picking this up right now is extremely heavy. And you can see the soil level go down. And then when it's set, it really doesn't move anymore. Once again, we're just going to top it off. All right, and of course we would be going to water it in right now if I wasn't moving them. And that's going to be that. So once you get to plants with a healthy root stock and healthy root system and everything else, it makes it a lot easier to repot. So looking at this example at the end on purpose, showed you how much less work it was in trying to go through each one of these other examples, even though these will all work. So there's going to be nothing wrong with what we did in any one of these, but you're going to get a better growth rate in here. I didn't lose any vigor. I'm not having to put on brand new roots and anything else. So the more times you take your container plants and be able to repot them, you're going to be better off for your plants as well as your own intensive labor going into it. All right, any questions I can help answer?
The soil.
Uh-huh.
The soil over there that people were wondering about. You can make your own soil rather than using something like that?
This is our NutriCoat. This is exactly what our pelletized fertilizer is. Our soil is basically, as I described, it's going to be a pine bark soil. We get it from a company called Pacific Organic, and it is just what it is. It's pine bark and 15% compost. It does have a little Talstar lime in it, but once again, this is a really good blend for agaves. Most of our plants will tolerate it, some of them won't. Agaves really thrive in this. Other than that, if it gets a little bit more expensive, but I go into like bonsai clay or permatill, which is basically baked slate, and those kinds of situations, you'll get a little bit more water drainage and a little bit more absorption, but it's going to make a heavier pot and it's going to be a lot more costing. So we really just can use about any soil as long as it's a well-drained soil. Appreciate it, appreciate it. Thanks you guys for coming down today. And if you're here in the gardens, please enjoy your time. We have a lot of things blooming in the summer right now that are specific to the summer. I know it's a little bit hot and humid, but it's better than it was last weekend, trust me. I was here last weekend. It's a lot better. Even though it's a little humid still, we're gonna make it through. We do, yes, we do have some specials going on in our nursery as well. I would love for you guys to go through our nursery and see some of the plants that we do produce here, some of the plants that we only produce here, and that's a major way of helping fund our garden. So we really, only way this garden is operational is based on the nursery plants selling. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you all for coming down.
Thank you.